This is the Kestrel Country Podcast, where we discuss the people, places, and events all around Kestrel Country. Yeah, but this will be good.
Yeah.
This will be good. Tim, thanks for coming in to talk to us today.
Thanks for inviting me in.
Yeah. Tim Van Dyken. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff: hunting, background, how you got into it.
Yeah.
Field to Flame. You got your T-shirt on. You're
Yeah.
representing.
Feel the flame. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess first of all, just tell us where are you from? Where'd you grow up, and how'd you get into hunting originally?
Yeah. Great question. I was born over in Toronto, Ontario. I'm not Canadian. I am. I guess technically I'm
I didn't
dual.
realize you were born in Ontario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Born in Toronto, Ontario. My dad was an American. My mom was a Canadian. So my dad ensured that we were all born as American citizens. He was very, very insistent on that, which worked out well because we moved to Washington when I was about a little over 2 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't live in Canada very long.
There you go. Then in Washington. Where in Washington?
So an hour north of Seattle, up in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful area. A lot of wildlife, a lot of outdoor recreation stuff, fishing, camping, hiking. I didn't do a lot of hunting growing up, but a lot more fishing and hiking. That was my dad's thing. He loved to hike.
Okay. Did he fish too? Is that how you got into that, or?
A little bit. He had gear, not a lot. My dad grew up fishing in northern Ontario in the lakes up there with my grandfather, pike fishing.
Me too. That's where I grew up fishing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we would go every year. We'd go up north of Sault Ste. Marie.
Oh, nice.
And go and fish in those lakes up there. Usually lake trout. We were like troll for lake trout.
Oh, yeah.
Or Mackinaws, they call them out here. But
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandfather loved pike fishing. He had some pike skulls in his garage, some really big ones.
That's awesome.
And my dad and one of his sisters pike fished all the time up there. They would go up there every summer and come home with boatloads of pike.
That's awesome.
That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I learned a little bit from him. Not a lot. He was he was more into gardening and hiking than he was into fishing. Not into hunting at all. He had never hunted before.
Okay.
So
how did you get into it then? I mean, it seems like a lot of people get into it because their dad took them hunting, right?
A lot of people, yeah, that's usually the way it goes most of the time. And there's folks like myself who I wanted to get into hunting, had no idea what to do. When we moved to Eastern Washington when I was 14, some friends took me out duck hunting.
Okay.
So I got into duck hunting a little bit. And I was in my mid-teens and I didn't know the difference between a shotgun and a rifle yet. It was pretty green to hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So duck hunting was your first foray into it.
Duck hunting, yeah, a little upland game, pheasants, chuckers was a big thing. We like to go chucker hunting, but ducks were the primary thing I'd go out and hunt.
Is there a lot of duck hunting in that area, Tri-Cities area?
Yeah, there actually is. A lot of the wheat fields and the rivers were really good for duck hunting. The cornfields, those were great for duck hunting. There's a few potholes here and there that were fun to go set up decoys on. But I primarily hunted the farmland. I knew a lot of farmers out there, so I'd sit in their wheat fields. Duck and geese would come in, usually in the evenings for a feeding before they go to the water for the evening. So it was a great places to duck hunt.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that kind of got you hooked.
It did. I went bear hunting one time with my brother and out in the Soton area. And I think I was 18, maybe 17. And I had no idea what it is I was doing. I got a bear tag and we went out there for 3 or 4 days, brought about an afternoon's worth of food and then starved for the rest of the time. Zero idea of what we were doing. Wandered around. I have I'm assuming I was in a right area I was allowed to be in. There's no such thing as Onyx maps. So you're just, you get to know the farmers, you get to know the people in the area, you talk to some locals. Where do you go? I go over here, you might find something, and you wander around making all kinds of racket, having no clue what you're doing, but having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hiking with a rifle.
Right.
Kind of what I call it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Nice. So you grew up, and then were you in that central Washington area for a while, or?
Yeah, so I moved there when I was 14. Then I went to the military when I was 18.
Okay.
kind of a mixed story there. Just trying to get away from family. I was a bit of a rebellious kid for a while, trying to get away from family. So I went to the military. My dad called one of his cousins who was a vice admiral in the Navy, and he told my dad, yes, send him. He needs to go.
There you go.
So it worked out well. My dad took his advice and sent me off to the Coast Guard for 6 years.
Okay.
So then I wound up back. I traveled around quite a bit, wound up back up in Mount Vernon, so an hour north of Seattle.
With the Coast Guard?
With the Coast Guard, yeah.
Okay.
So I was up there patrolling the San Juan Islands for a couple of years, and then became a police officer up there. And that's where I said. So I settled down there after I got out of the military. Settled down there with my wife. I met her up there. We got married up there in 2004.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So is that close to where your family had moved from Ontario?
Yeah. So it was. In fact, I went to the same church my dad had started out there.
Oh wow.
In 1981. I went to the same church. That's where I met my wife.
But that was more by accident. Like you didn't like plan. Oh, this is where I'm going back to.
No, in fact,
the Coast Guard took you there.
Well, and God's providence was working in that. I was in California, not doing well spiritually, and so it would have been in 2001 2000 area, that area, and I had orders to go to a base in California, Central California, Carquinez, which was a great station, very sought after. I got that station, and I went home for a vacation for a couple of weeks. And towards the end, I just knew God was calling me to go back up somewhere different. I knew I couldn't stay in California. Nothing good was going to happen. And I called my captain and I said, I need to go to Bellingham. He's like, why? I was like, I don't know. I just need to go. I can't be in California. So he said, I can't change. You're leaving in 3 weeks. I can't change. It's like, well, you just need to do whatever you can. And we had a good relationship. He actually is the one who really got me into fishing. He loved to fish. So we'd go fishing in California and up in Alaska. So he said, okay, let me see what I can do. He made a few phone calls. 3 weeks later, I was up in Bellingham.
Wow. So, crazy.
Yeah.
And you were there for how long?
So it was just over 2 years I needed to serve in Bellingham. So I moved there in January, and then I got out in March of 2003, April.
Did you do any hunting while you were in the Coast Guard? Is that
zero?
None? Even when you have that opportunity to, like, you can hunt anywhere, right?
I was
Isn't that the way it works?
Yeah. I mean, I was being in Alaska. As a military, I was up there for a total of 4 months, and both times were during hunting season. And because of being in the military, I could have gotten really, really inexpensive tags, and there's some different rules now, but back then I could have gotten 3 deer on it wasn't a resident tag, but it was a resident or non-resident military tag.
Yeah.
And it was like $30 for all 3 tags. Super cheap. And I completely ignored it. I went fishing. I did a lot of fishing up there, but no hunting. Yeah, I was looking back, unfortunate that I didn't take advantage of it.
Did you see a lot of game though? I mean, like, so what, as in the Coast Guard, were you out kind of patrolling the coast? And it sounds like a stupid question.
Yeah.
But, like, would you see a lot of stuff, or were you kind of more out and further out in the water and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So we did a lot of search and rescue up there and fishery patrol. So I was on a 400-foot ship, and I was on a law enforcement detachment team off the ship. So we spent more of our time not patrolling U.S. boats, just focusing on search and rescue for U.S. boats, but actually patrolling international date line. And that's where the Russians would come over and try to fish in U.S. waters or cross the international date line. And there was a treaty they were not allowed to do that. So that was our focus, was to go up and down that line, international date line, and just keep them on their side. And we were up in the Bering Sea.
Wow.
So definitely we saw a lot of wildlife, but usually obviously when we were on the coastline, we'd see a lot of moose and bears, especially. Not a lot of deer, but moose and bear were all over the place. And then of course out in the ocean, we saw a lot of fish, a lot of whales.
Yeah. That's cool.
It was fun.
That's good. So you met your wife in Bellingham, settled down there for a while. Well, really till relatively recently.
Yeah. So we got married, and I moved there in it would have been '01. We got married in '04, and then, raised 4 kids there. And then our youngest was 4 years old. We moved out here. So maybe it would have been 2.5, 3 years ago, moved out here to Idaho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you hunting on the west side before moving here?
Yeah. So my hunting career kind of started, oh man, I'm 44 now. So it would have started when I was about 30, 32. So I had gotten out of the police force and into finance. And then my brother-in-law said, "Hey, you should get a bow. And we should go bow hunting." Cause he was into hunting. I said, "Okay, well, I'll go do that." So I went and bought a bow, went to my friend owned an archery shop, went down there and got totally set up. We got me a nice PSE. So middle of the road, nothing fancy. And my uncle took me out one day. I said, "Well, let's go set up a tree stand." And it was second day of hunting. Set up a tree stand, got his spot all set up. And I asked him, "Well, where am I going to go?" He said, "Well, you can set up a tree stand wherever. This is, some land that a friend of mine owns. Just walk up the road and let's see what we can find." So we walked up this old dirt road, and there was a doe. So I shot my first deer within about 4 hours of my very first deer hunt ever. And I thought, this is really
awesome.
Easy. Like, why don't more people do this?
So like from the ground, or were you in your stand?
I was walking.
You hadn't even set up a stand.
I hadn't even set up a stand. And I was 4 hours in my very first day of hunting. The only drawback to that was my hunting season for deer was over.
I know.
I'd never experienced hunting until the next year. I mean, I went out quite a bit with my brother-in-law and my uncle, but it was the next year. So that would have been, 13 years ago. And I didn't know anything about it. And that was an interesting thing about getting into hunting when you don't know anything about how hunting works. I spent a ton of time. YouTube wasn't huge yet, but it was getting there. I listened to a lot of podcasts on hunting, books, read books on hunting, found some the old Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation books, read a lot of those. I have a whole stack of those I had read multiple times, just learning how hunting works and what to do. So that was kind of how I got into it. Just studying, picking up anything I could read, magazines.
It's interesting now that's like YouTube especially.
Oh,
there's
so different.
So many resources out there. Like that elk I shot with my bow a couple years ago. Honestly, like as weird as it sounds, like I credit YouTube with that one, because it was like I had been watching all these different videos and like actually watched a couple different guys talking about the frontal shot on an elk. And I would have never taken a frontal shot before that. Like there were multiple times where I had elk, easily within archery distance. I was like, man, I just didn't get the perfect shot presented to me. And so I didn't shoot, right? And I had just been watching all these different videos. I think it was like a Corey Jacobson video, like the week before hunting season.
Yes.
And like watching it and watching like, oh, like here's where, and watching him do it successfully. And just even like that knowledge, but also that confidence. It was huge. And it was like this bull stepped up onto the road looking straight at me. And I was like, there you go.
Here we go.
And it was awesome.
That's great.
So it's crazy how much YouTube has changed. I feel like before it's still obviously huge to have a mentor.
It is
in hunting.
It is.
But it's amazing how much, how many resources are out there.
I think that's good too. I think, when it comes to hunting, finding new tactics, how to hunt, areas, what to look for, sign to look for, how to track an animal, butchering an animal. I mean, YouTube has been really good for someone who doesn't have that mentor to walk them out there and say, okay, this is how you field dress an animal. This is how you do the gutless method. And you just got to figure it out on your own, or you have your mentor as YouTube. Yeah.
So you were kind of self-taught.
Yep. Fully self-taught. Yeah.
And so what was your journey from shooting a doe your first year to maybe getting more serious about it?
Yeah. After that first time, the next year, of course, I was out quite a bit. And then I decided to branch out a little bit more and try something new. So the very next year, a handful of friends said, hey, we're going to go up to Alaska and do caribou. And I thought, that's great. I can do that. I shot a deer. I mean, 4 hours later, I had my deer. And these guys they're out there hunting for weeks on end and finally getting one. I'm like, I definitely had this. I had a lot of confidence. So we decided to go to Alaska, and that was, I'm not sure what year that was, but the season was supposed to, for caribou on the North Slope, was supposed to go through from September 15 through October 15. And before we got up there, they shut half the season down and closed it down October 1st.
Oh, wow.
And we were scheduled to fly out October 2nd and hunt from the 3rd to the 15th. So we got a hold of the fishing game up there, and they said, well, you can use your tag for something of equal or lesser value. So you can use your caribou tag for a caribou or a deer or a bear. So we had a friend up there and called him up, and he said that let's go over to Kodiak Island. Let's fly to the opposite end. I think it'd be the south. Oh man, I'm not sure how the island is shaped, but anyways, it was the opposite end of where the city is, maybe an hour flight on a little beaver. So we ran out there and decided to do that with for Sitka blacktail. Okay. And that was when I really started getting more serious, because I realized, okay, this is not just hiking. Well, hiking on Kodiak Island is pretty intense. A lot of bears out there. Yeah, we ran into 5 Kodiak brown bears.
Wow.
Thankfully, they never destroyed any of our stuff, but they did a neighboring camp. They destroyed their entire camp.
Wow.
So that was my first real, okay, now hunting is more than just walking out in the woods with a bow or a gun. You actually have to put some work and effort into it. So that's when I really started spending a lot more time just hiking in the mountains, setting up trail cameras, understanding the movement of animals, reading sign, trying to understand what a scrape is, what a rub is, when they do that, why they do it. Cameras, I would usually have no less than 5 or 6 cameras up at any time, just trying to understand how deer, elk, and bear moved and why. And I would spend majority of an entire year with just my cameras up. Just all I wanted to do was go out there and get pictures and see what they were doing in videos.
Yeah. Those trail cams are amazing.
They are.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been dragging my feet on. I finally put some up on my property this year. It's just
nice.
like, it's so much fun to just go, be like, see what's moving around when you're not there. And that's one of the things I really love about, like the Midwest bow hunting is what I grew up doing. And you're like just sitting in a tree stand for 12 hours a day, which I can't really do anymore. I'm too antsy.
Yeah, no.
But it was like, it was fun because you'd sit there, and after, half an hour, 45 minutes, the wood starts to just do its thing as if you're not there. And it's cool to like get that. You're almost like glimpsing into what's going on when you're not around, which is pretty cool.
It is. It's amazing to see the woods come alive. That's such an incredible feeling. And you get that especially when you're up on a tree stand. There's something special about that. But I'm the same way as you. I can't sit around in a tree stand for very long. I got to get down and go move.
Yeah, I'm like, what's over that next hill?
Yes.
Which is funny thinking back to when I was growing like in the Midwest. It really is like you would literally just go sit in your stand.
Yeah.
For hours.
That's
and
brutal.
Hours and hours. And just like, well, I guess just wait for something to walk by.
It's great for some people, and I suppose there's a time and a place for that, but that's not my style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you hunted quite a bit on the west side, and then you moved here 2.5 years ago?
Yeah, 2.5 years ago. Okay. Did my first bear hunt out here 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
Which that was another different experience too, learning how to hunt bear. I had hunted Roosevelt elk on the West Coast, which is a different hunt than Rocky Mountain elk. They're larger animals, smaller antler, but they are extremely quiet. They don't bugle a whole lot.
Interesting.
Even during the middle of the rut, you hardly hear them calling, a little bit, not a lot. And it was interesting. We had it at one time where we heard an elk moving around. We knew that there was probably a bull in the area because we were cow calling and he was skirting around. And the reprod was probably 15 feet tall, real thick Christmas tree-like trees everywhere. You can't see more than about 10 yards. And so there's this old logging skidder road. So I set up on one side. My buddy set up about 20 yards behind me, was calling. And I was at full draw, and there's his bull, and you see a line of trees and then the opening, and he would just peek his head out. You see one antler and half of his face and in one eye, and he'd look at you, and then his head would go back in, and it was dead silent, and he was gone.
Wow.
And that was Rosie's. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah. Did you get one?
I did not get one. No, that we saw a lot. I had a shot at a big cow and made some errors in that. So,
and that's like on the coast, pretty much, is where the
yeah. In fact, where I was, where we in our spot where we had a lot of good. There's a lot of elk there. We just I was a new hunter to elk hunting. That was my first couple of years, and I sucked at it. It was very clear afterwards. But we would up on the mountains once we're up high, you could actually see the ocean.
That's awesome.
It was real close. We're maybe
cool.
15 miles, 10 miles from the ocean, which is beautiful area to hunt. It's gorgeous, thick underbrush, but elk everywhere. Hard to find them because they're quiet. But when you do find a clear cut and you see elk, you can, I mean, it's so beautiful to watch them. And we had a whole herd, actually that one I shot at, the night before we had found this herd in this big clear cut, probably about a 40, 50 acre clear cut. It's not huge, medium size. And this bull was just walking around his cows, and it was just before dark. So we ended up just putting them to bed there, then walking out. But, he was, the only Roosevelt bull I'd ever really heard bugling, and he would bugle just real quiet, like almost like a half a bugle. And then he would shut up and he'd just walk around his cows. And then just before it got dark, and we were probably 70 or 80 yards away, see the tops of their heads and their antlers of the bulls. There was like 14 cows, maybe 2 or 3 spikes in this big 6-point bull. And then they just, without even a sound, just quietly just disappeared into the woods. Just super surreal and interesting to watch them just disappear, and you don't hear anything.
Yeah.
Like, these are massive animals, 1,000-pound animals, and can move that silently is just crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah.
So do they have a lot of predators over there? Is that like, because I know around here, at least what I've heard, part of the reason why the elks are a lot less vocal than they used to be is because of the wolves.
Yeah,
because they
absolutely.
would, they're basically attracting predators,
Yep.
right? I mean, and hunters to a degree too. But
Sure.
Is that similar, or is it just by nature those Roosevelt don't bugle as much?
I think it's more nature because there is no wolves out there. There's no wolves on the west side of the Cascades there at all. In fact, maybe 4 years ago, we had the first sighting of a wolf on the west side of the Cascades, maybe an hour from where we lived. Outside of that, there's just no wolves. The predators for them are going to be the black bears, fair amount of black bears. And the hunting for black bear in that area is you can't bait, you can't use dogs. So it's real difficult. And the regulations are pretty rough against any predator hunting. There's a lot of cats. So cat population is pretty high. That puts a lot of pressure on them. But I think just naturally, Roosevelts are just a lot quieter than a Rocky.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So you moved over here,
Yep.
and obviously it's pretty different from a terrain standpoint, from the game. What was that like making that transition, getting into hunting over here?
Yeah, that was interesting. Moving away from an area where I'd done a fair amount of hunting, but not a ton, in a state that's not generally as hunter friendly as Idaho, was so different coming here. And I was, of course, being a hunter, I was excited. And I wanted to, I had been hunting here off and on as an out-of-state hunter quite a bit for whitetail and bear. So for me, it was a treat to be able to move over to a state that actually embraced hunting the way it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Been out a lot. And I travel out of state to Wyoming too. Wyoming is different terrain, but hunter friendly as well. Those some great states to hunt in.
Yeah. So tell me about Field to Flame. What's that all about?
Yeah.
How'd that get started, and what are you doing with it?
Yeah, now Field to Flame. So I got it. Field to Flame was an idea that me and my sons. Well, I decided to create something that I wanted to showcase getting people into hunting. And I think there's a lot of dads out there, or let me rephrase it, there's a lot of kids out there that want to get into hunting, but their dads don't know how to hunt. So the dads want to get into hunting, but they don't know what to do. And I've experienced this quite a bit here.
This goes back to what we were just talking about, right? Yeah. If you don't have that legacy of your
Right.
dad getting into it. How do you do it?
What do you do? Where do you start? Yeah. I mean, you can use YouTube, but that only gets you so far. And you just got to get out there and make a lot of mistakes. And I think the hunting community is a very close-knit community. There's only about 4.5% of the population that actually hunts. So a very small portion of the population. And it's actually been shrinking. So one of my thoughts, and I want to get my sons into hunting. So I thought, well, why don't I create a show that teaches dads how to get out with their kids? And that was a big thing. I think just the camaraderie that I have with my sons going out hunting was really important to me to build that relationship and that bond, do real difficult things with them out in the woods, make them work hard, be uncomfortable, and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And how do I instill that into them? And they wanted to go hunting. So that's kind of spawned the idea of Field to Flame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned getting them out, making them uncomfortable, but having them enjoy it.
Yes.
How's that balance worked?
Interesting way to.
Is it mostly just that they already have that desire, and so they're willing to do it, or has there been some? Yeah, I guess how's that gone? Because I feel like that's something I've kind of struggled with. It's like, how much do you try to make it a real positive experience and make sure they're pretty comfortable so that they don't be like, this hunting thing stinks, you know?
Yeah.
But yet also pushing them to do things that are hard and that make them uncomfortable.
It is a difficult thing to balance. And what I've found is doing some things with them that are not super hard at first, but they're also really talking to them about why we do hard things. Like, what's the purpose of football? What's the purpose of having a lot of homework or having to do a difficult task? What are we trying to instill in you as a child, as a son, growing up to be a man and a warrior? How do we instill that? So I spent a lot of time coaching them initially before we would go out hunting. Okay, this is what it's going to feel like. And this is how it's going to be uncomfortable. And I mean, I got photos and videos of me taking my kids out when they were still in backpacks, you know, in the kid carrier. So I started them really young, getting them out with me, making them do, hike hard with me. But they want to be out there with dad, and I want to be out there with them. And I show interest in what they want to do. And so then that reciprocates. They show interest in what I want to do. They get excited when there's an animal. All that pain and that stress and the frustration goes away when we got an animal. So that excitement really has pushed them to that level of, okay, I can deal with some difficult things. And I found that one of the best ways to get my sons to do difficult things, really difficult things, and at the end of it, enjoy it, is filming some of it and then showing them. And I just film it. My initial start of that was just filming only for the sake of our own memories. And we get home and we would have what we would call story time. We did this with hunting too. We get back to the camp, we have story time, and we look at all the film and we talk about our day and what happened. And they get excited because they see, oh yeah, I remember doing that. I'm feeling good right now because I'm back at camp and I got some warm food in my belly and I got a drink. I'm happy. We're sitting back sipping a little whiskey and kids have their hot chocolate and it's wonderful. It feels good. And then you look at those videos like, yeah, that was tough. That was a lot of fun though. I really enjoyed that. And then as a dad, I'm really encouraging them, like, you pushed through some really hard things and you came out on top. You didn't complain. So that's kind of the balance that I've taken with them to try to get them excited about it and do it and I want them to do it because I want to do it. So it's a bit selfish, but now they're at a point now with the boys being 11, 12, and 14, where they are constantly asking, Dad, when can we go out hunting? I want to go out hunting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a different mode. Whereas 4 or 5 years ago, they're like, I don't know, I'll stay home. Like, nope, you're coming with me and we're going to like it.
So you started by filming stuff for just your own, almost like a tool for you to help with your kids so they can watch it for your own use. And is that how Field to Flame started? Because you were already filming stuff. Is it primarily, you mentioned a show. So YouTube?
Yep. So we haven't launched our first episode yet. We got
Okay.
it done. So we filmed the whole episode, and about a 30-minute episode. Hired a professional cinematographer to go out with us and wander around. It was an extremely difficult Central Idaho high mountain black bear hunt when the weather was brutal last spring. The late snow. We had snow we went there in June and we had snow, like late June. It was like June 20. And so we had a lot of snow up there, miserable weather. It rained and stormed the entire time we were out. I was making these boys get up at 2:30 in the morning to get to different spots to go hunting, getting back by 11 o'clock at night. They were taking naps whenever they had a chance. And I drove them into the ground. They were so tired.
Oh, man.
I was tired too. And my cinematographer, he was blown away. He said, I've never seen boys do such hard things and not a single complaint the entire time. And it was a real blessing to hear that, because I'd been working on that so hard that I want these boys to do difficult things and not complain about it and understand that life is going to be hard. There's a lot of things out there that are hard. How do you do something really hard and find the joy in it still? And maybe you're not going to be enjoying the moment of it, but don't complain about it. And when you're done, look back and say, yeah, that was a hard thing, but I learned a lot of lessons from it. And they took that real well and did really well with it. And it was really exciting to look back and see that excitement in them. So that was, that really kind of drove me. And my purpose of doing that first episode was to see, okay, do I want to do this? Is this something that would be beneficial? And so that was kind of started the whole idea of, I really want to turn this into something where I can teach dads to do difficult things with their sons, get out there and hunt. Yes, you're going to have days where you're not going to have a lot of success. You're going to have years where you're not going to have success. Mm-hmm. But there's so many hunting shows out there that my boys and I love to watch, but it's always a dad being out there by himself. The guy is out there. Where are the sons? Like that's our next generation.
This is why the hunter numbers are dwindling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So get your sons out there and go do difficult things with them. They need to be out there. I don't want to see a show that only has the guys out there hunting. Yeah, we're gonna have episodes where there's no success. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I'm taking my sons out. I'm doing something that's more important than just getting an animal. The harvest is important. That's what we're there for. Just like winning a football game, we're there to win. But the lessons we're learning along the way are really important.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and that's hunting, right?
Yeah.
I know. And for people who maybe aren't into hunting or don't do it, I know even like my wife, she didn't grow up in a hunting family.
Yeah.
And I remember like the first time when we were dating, I think I went on a turkey hunt or something, where I was going out early morning turkey hunt and came back and she's like, where's the turkey? I'm like, well, I was hunting. Like, it doesn't mean I'm going to get something every time, And I was like, and besides, like you said earlier, I'm like, it's like first day of season. Like, I don't necessarily want to shoot something.
Right.
Like, I get to keep hunting.
Yep.
And so many hunting shows, like you said, especially kind of the traditional Midwest, whatever. I don't know. I don't want to pick on any particular shows, but it's like, it's all about that, like giant buck walks out, boom. The grip and grin and all that. And I feel like one of the shows that first really seemed to have a number of episodes without success was like Meat Eater, right?
Yes.
Or like the first, even before Meat Eater, it was The Wild Within. Steven Rinella. It was like on Travel Channel, I think.
Yep.
And it would be like, we didn't get anything. There's no kill shot. There's no, but it still was like resonates because like, oh, here's the story and here's what happened and here's how it went. And especially like bow hunting for elk, I feel like, I mean, shooting an elk is amazing, but it's almost a side benefit to just being out there in the woods, in the mountains, hearing the elk, interacting with them. If you don't see anything or hear anything, it's pretty tough. Like
tough.
That's tough.
I've experienced
but
that.
But at least if you're like encountering them, it's like, that was amazing. Like that was the best elk hunting I ever had. And there's no dead elk.
No dead
elk.
You know
what I mean?
And Meat Eater was another one. That's one of the shows me and my boys spent a lot of time watching every episode multiple times. And Fresh Tracks, Randy Newberg's Fresh Tracks was another one we loved because same thing. There was times when him and Rinella are both the same attitude of conservation versus preservation, really understanding the differences, and then spending a lot of time just enjoying the outdoors, not necessarily wanting to get the biggest, best one that's out there. That's not the primary. It's enjoying the outdoors and being out there, and taking that idea and then adding in, hey, I'm doing this with my sons. We're gonna respect what God gave us. We're gonna glorify Him in what we're doing. We're gonna really have a lot of fun with doing hard things. And you're gonna be men after this. You're gonna be able to go through some really hard things. And you combine hunting with football and doing tackle football. I mean, how many schools have flag football? We're gonna do tackle football starting at a little age and hunt. Those are hard things for boys to do, but it makes men out of you real quick. You understand how to get hit hard and get back up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So are your boys involved with the planning of this too? And like, are they involved with like, hey, Dad, here's like, let's do an episode like this, or what? Were they involved in the whole thing, or was it kind of bringing them along?
Initially, it was a lot more just me with my wild ideas. I tend to have a lot of ideas I like to try out. And this one is the one that actually was something my wife said, you should push this. This is something you seem to enjoy, and I think it'd be really good. And so I ran with it. And then my sons really got in. They loved the idea. So they have all kinds of mapped out ideas on hunts we want to do together and what kind of episodes we can do. We want to do some episodes on fishing because one of my sons loves fishing more than hunting. And the other two boys love hunting. The butchering, the processing of animals, understanding how to hunts, not just, hey, we're going out in the woods and you see us kill an animal. This is how we set up. This is how we prepare. They want to get all that involvement built into it, which is great. I love that they're so involved in that and they enjoy it a ton.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So they're, what ages again?
Yeah. 11, 12, and 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're in the thick of it.
Yep.
How have you balanced like football and hunting? I mean, it's like, speaking of, like, those are both awesome, but I feel like
I retired.
That's tough. Yeah.
You almost have to. It's a difficult one where I miss a few practices, especially being one of the helping coach the boys' team. Two of the boys are on the same team this year. So every other year, because their ages, every other year they're on 3 separate teams, and the opposite year they're on 2 different teams. So this is the easy year. Next year is going to be a difficult year, but it's just, every moment you have, you just take advantage of it. Afternoons, a lot of afternoon hunts. Get out of school. I'm going to pick you up from school, and you're going to change in the truck as we drive to a hunting location, and you're going to skip one practice, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And we're going to go hunt. And the second the season's over, we're going to be hunting nonstop after school, weekends. And my dear wife is very patient in allowing us to do this because she understands the value of it. But it definitely is. Very rarely will I go on a solo hunt. It's mostly with the kids, which I did do last week. I went out on an elk hunt without my boys. And I have to say that was the first thing I said when I got back to my boys is I wish I was with you guys.
That's awesome.
Like it's not the same anymore. I don't think I'll do very many solo hunts.
It's weird getting like, I'm just starting probably too late. Well, not too late, but later than I should in some of that respect. Asa just got his first deer on Sunday.
Wonderful.
Which was awesome.
That's great.
But like the first experience was I think it was the year before last when he shot his first turkey. It was like his first success ever.
Yes.
And getting that glimpse, I've heard guys talk about it, but it's like hunting it's a fun thing to do with other people. It's certainly fun. Like it's all awesome. But you're obviously, you want to be the one who's taking the shot.
Yeah.
Like you want to be the successful one, right? But I was like, having my son shoot that turkey, like as minor as that was, like a turkey, right?
Yeah.
It was a Jake, and that was like the most fun hunt I've ever been on at all, right? You're like, this is incredible.
Yes.
And having experiencing that success for them, it's crazy to see how rewarding that can be. It reminds me, even hearing, I've heard, coaches talk that way, or players who became coaches in football or whatever. Like, taking my team to the Super Bowl is way rewarding than doing it myself, kind of thing. And it's cool to see that and have that, like, hey, I really want to see this success for you. And I'm actually way more excited if you're the one who gets to take that shot.
Yes.
Than me, like elbowing him out of the way. Like, it's time for me to take the shot.
Yeah. That's so true. I mean, I had that last year with my youngest son. There was this, we were deer hunting, and there was a very large whitetail, 4x5. It was biggest whitetail I had ever seen out in the wild. And I let my 10-year-old son take a shot at it, and he missed. But like, I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't go back and say, I'm going to take that shot because I know I can. It was a little over 200 yards. I could easily knock that thing down. And he was just shaking enough, and he pulled the shot. And that happens, and it sucks. And he learned some good lessons. I learned a few things out of it. And it was a hard thing in a way to see, okay, I watched that big buck run off, and we're not going to see him again. And he may never. We're going to go back to the same area this fall. We may never see him again. He may be gone. He may be coyote bait or wolf bait. Who knows? But I wouldn't change that. And that I just seeing his adrenaline and his, working through that, composing himself, dialing himself in for a shot, still making a mistake, but that experience he has now is invaluable. Yeah, and you're right. It's hard as a parent. It's like, oh man, I'd love to put that thing on the wall.
Yeah.
It's not about me. It's about them.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So where's it going from here? I mean, you did a pilot episode. Would you call it that?
Yep. I have a pilot episode.
Is it going to come out? Is it going to be released somewhere? Like, what's?
Yeah, I've got an agreement for a contract, which will include 6 additional episodes.
Okay.
And the goal from them is to film the 6 episodes this fall, winter, and spring, between bear and deer and spring turkey, do some fishing and at least 1 episode of processing meat. And then next spring, summer launch, all 7 episodes then.
Awesome.
So we'll see. Hoping it goes that way. It's things don't always go the way you want, but that's the plan right now from them. So we'll hopefully see things out next summer.
And that'll be all you and your boys.
Just me and my boys.
So you got a lot of hunting, and fishing between now and then.
We do, which is great. I love that part.
Is it all North Idaho? You guys traveling anywhere?
For this year, it's going to be all Idaho, all North Idaho, and then next year we have most likely do at least 1 Alaska hunt for caribou, moose, and then we have got a handful of points for Wyoming antelope. So I've done that hunt a handful of times, come away with half a dozen antelope. So we're going to go out there again and try to knock down a few antelope. And we'll do some fishing and some hunting next year. We got a tuna fish coming out.
Oh, cool.
We're going to do one of those next late July, early August.
Okay.
So that'll be
Where
fun.
do you go for that?
I go out to, can't think of the name, but it's on the Washington coast towards the south end of not quite, about 3/4 of the way down Washington coast. There's a small town out there I go out of, and I have a friend who owns a charter boat, and he'll take you about 60 miles offshore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a fun, in fact, that would be something we should take, you and Asa should go out with us. I think they do 12 people on a boat, so we could get a group together and do an episode out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a fun fish. Yep.
Yeah. I miss some of that. Like, I mean, I grew up in Michigan, so it's lakes, it's not ocean fishing, but still going out a ways into the bigger water and trolling. And it's like, I love fly fishing. I wouldn't do that for anything.
No,
but it's
I agree.
Fun to get out on the big water too.
Yes.
Which is pretty awesome.
It is, and out there too. There's, I don't believe there's a limit on the tuna, but a lot of the captains just limit people to 10 tuna a day, which you're talking 15,
still a lot of tuna,
15, 20 pound tuna. Wow. I mean, 10 to 20 pounds is like the average range of what they're getting out there. So yeah, you get 10, 15 pound tuna, and you do that for 3 days. That's a lot of fish.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you gotten into the cooking side of it too?
Yep.
Is that
Cooking
something that you guys are-
and curing.
flame, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's got to be part of it.
Yeah, all the way from the field to flame. Absolutely. I mean, in fact, we got our own kind of motto, mission statement for our field to flame. The boys and I developed. But yeah, it's all about going from, we're not just out there in the field hiking, but when we get something, what do you do with it now? We got to bring it back. We got to process it properly. We got to bring it back. We got to cook it up or preserve it and cook it. So yeah, so we've been doing a little bit of that now with just developing our own recipes. My wife's been building out some of our own spices that we're using, breakfast sausage seasonings and different things like that we use. And our goal too with it is not to have any of these weird preservatives in it. We like to have things as clean as possible. That's a pretty big thing for us. So that's kind of our focus. And how do we do this in a way that will make the meat last as well? So making pepperoni sticks out of bear meat, summer sausage, land Jaegers. Yeah, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome. And you're doing all that yourself.
Yep. Doing it. Well, we're,
or will be.
Yeah, we've done some of it. The pepperoni sticks, we've done all that ourselves now. I'm learning how to do land Jaegers and summer sausage. I've got most of that figured out. So I got our own equipment we've been slowly stocking up on, and yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And getting your kids involved the whole way.
And the kids, every time we get an animal, we have our station set up in our garage, and they all know how to bone out meat, and they're learning what cuts are what, and they're understanding how to package it, how to grind it. We will take, and I mean, to the extent we take the bear fat too, and the boys are learning how to render that down, make tallow, and we have jars and jars of that. So yeah, we use that. My wife uses that for cooking, for baking. It's great.
You guys, do just like summer or just pepperoni sticks and stuff with the bear meat, or do you guys eat? What do you think of bear meat?
It's bear meat's interesting.
It's a controversial thing.
Yeah, I love bear meat.
Yeah,
I think bear meat's great. I love our pepperoni sticks. You have to be careful how you're processing it and prepping it, because of course there's always a fear of trichinosis, and you don't want to, as Stephen Ranella says, you don't want to be trick positive. And I don't. I've no desire to have that. And I guess I can last inside your muscles for 5-6 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think the biggest part is getting the heat, internal temperature of the meat up to a certain point, holding it there for a certain amount of time, kills off any of the bacteria or any of the trichinosis that can get into your muscle. And as long as you're preserving it properly and you're careful and you're very clean in what you do, your process, that's our big thing. Our boys and myself, we're extremely careful about cleanliness. I think if you're really careful with that, you prevent a lot of problems. Yeah. But bear meat's great. We've done some hamburger. Well, my wife will mix it into different casseroles, gives it a good different flavor. It's great. And around here it's different. Like depending on where the bear is, right? Like a bear will take on the flavor of what it eats.
Right.
So if you shoot a bear on a river where there's salmon are just finished spawning, there's a reason why Alaska, you're not required to take the bear meat in the fall.
Fishy.
Yeah. You're required to take the bear meat in the spring for a spring bear hunt, but you're not required to take it in the fall. And they know. I mean, it's disgusting. It smells terrible. It smells like a big rotten fish. And a lot of the bears we're shooting out here are high mountain bears. They're eating blueberries, grass. They're going to be catching small rodents as well. And of course, in the springtime, they're going to be going after the deer and the elk, fawn, and calves. But in the fall, or springtime before the fawn and the calves are dropping, there's a lot of grass-fed bear. And they're eating primarily grass for the first month or so after they come out of hibernation too, because they need to, release that wax plug. So I would say they're close to like a grass-fed beef. They're different than a beef. That's a controversial subject there. People will say, "Oh, they're not beef." I realize that, but they are definitely a very tasty because they're so grass-fed for the first 2 months out of hibernation. Yeah,
Interesting.
That's good.
So what's the next hunt? What's next on the list? Is it deer? I mean,
Next,
right now,
yeah,
we're
finishing up elk.
finishing up elk rifle. Are your boys rifle elk hunting?
Yep. So we're going to try to get something. We don't have a whole lot of time, but
it's tough around here.
It is tough. Deer is a big thing. We have some bear spots we're going to. We've had a couple of spots that are getting completely annihilated by bears, multiple bears. I think of one spot that has 6 bears coming on it regularly. So 2 of my boys have gotten a bear. My oldest son has not gotten a bear yet. Actually, in that episode, you'll see why he didn't get a bear. And so I bring that out, that stress of, oh man, we got a bear here. Yes, it's great. And then, disappointment. So it's exciting. But yeah, so bears coming up, deer, and then we got some fishing coming up. So a lot of fishing.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, Tim.
Thanks for having me
coming
on
in and sharing.
Yeah, appreciate it.
It's always good. We'll have to have you on again as just more hunting stories.
Yeah.
Actually, what we should do is do an episode with your boys.
That'd be fun. They would enjoy that.
That'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Get a little update maybe after the season.
Yeah.
So, cool.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next week.